Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. We just had one or two technical things we needed to resolve, but welcome to our webinar, the webinar which we're hosting inQuba and Microsoft together, called Redefine the Delivery of Financial Service Journeys That Clients Love, How to Boost Customer Acquisition and Retention in the Digital Economy. My name is Anthony Odler. I am the admin for today and the host. And I think let me just take a moment to welcome our speakers for today, our speakers and our panelists. Trent, why don't you quickly say hi and give a quick intro.
Hi, Ron. Thank you very much for joining today. Really appreciate the time. I am Managing Director of inQuba, one of the founding members, and really looking forward to spending some time together with Servaas today to share what we're doing in the journey management space.
Servaas?
Hey everyone, my name is Servaas Venter. I'm the Sales Director for Microsoft, looking after our FSI customers in South Africa.
Fantastic, thank you. So perhaps a little bit of housekeeping from my side, just before we whiz into the material, is that like I said, I'm going to be the admin on this. I'm actually going to be driving the slides, so if things go too fast or too slow, it's all me. Like many of you, we are also in our homes. So please extend grace when you hear dogs or see family members or something like that. In terms of our roadmap for today, we're going to be taking you through a deck that we've put together at inQuba and Microsoft together. Servaas is going to be kicking us off. Trent will be taking over, but the guys will be talking quite a lot. We're going to get into a Q&A towards the end. So if you have a look at your little webinar widget, there is a questions section there. During the course of the webinar, please feel free to send any questions through. We'll try and handle as many questions as we can towards the end. And yeah, stick around so that we can make sure that we get the material through to you afterwards as well. We'll make sure that you get the slideware and the recording and that kind of thing. So at this stage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Servaas and I'm going to step out. Thanks, Servaas, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ant. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so welcome everyone, and first of all, wishing you Heritage Day tomorrow, and if you're traveling, really hope you come back safe. And what I'm doing for you today is delivering our Microsoft point of view in terms of what's happening in the financial sector industry, specifically with the advent of COVID and what's obviously how it's affecting all of us and our banking customers, and what Microsoft is doing in response to that. So first of all, maybe before I start, just a personal reflection is that being in the industry for a long time, I've obviously experienced the dot-com crash. I've experienced, even from an infrastructure perspective, the advent of fiber channel interconnect technology that basically laid the foundation for private cloud at the time, and then obviously evolved into cloud. We've seen server virtualization coming and really changing the fundamentals of economics and efficiencies in terms of how our customers can deliver services. And we've also seen the economic crash as an example, all in what seems like a very short time for me. However, what I would say, what we're seeing today with COVID, the velocity and the impact of COVID to everything and everyone around us is very, very different to what happened to us all in the past. And that's really what I'd like to focus on and provide you that Microsoft point of view and maybe give you some insights in terms of what is possible as you work through this unprecedented event that's unfolding around us. So basically what we're seeing here is, from our perspective, digital transformation, is driven by all the dynamics underneath it. If it wasn't for any of those, obviously you wouldn't need to transform. And the important point to make for me here is this, from our perspective, is all built on a Microsoft platform, and that platform coexists with our partner ecosystem. And we're very happy, and I'm very proud to be with inQuba today, and really looking forward to how they're going to show us how the customer experience evolution, also driven by COVID, is impacting our customers positively today. And next slide, please, Ant. So there's been macro impacts, as we all know, that really hit our markets, and you know, the three different markets within FSI: the banking, capital markets, and insurance. Specifically looking at the banking markets, for example, the pressure that the low interest rates have put on our financial services institutions is really unprecedented and causing a lot of strain and stress in their internal systems and their financial gearing, which really causes them to relook at their business models and how they're going to approach their customer base going forward after COVID is over. They also have to provision a lot of funds in terms of bad debt that's probably going to come into the system. And we've seen this with most South African banks. A lot of them have already announced their results, and we can see the impact and the stress this is causing on their system. Next slide, please. Apologies, I didn't see the next slide. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so Microsoft's own Satya Nadella at our Q3 annual quarterly results event basically said he saw 2 years of digital transformation happening in the space of 2 months. And I'm pretty confident there's a lot of customers here that would agree with me that that 2 months had to be even shorter for them to be able to deal with the complexity and the risk and the happenings around them and how they had to react to this. So we're going to see a lot of that in the next few slides, and I'm looking forward to spending that with you. But before we get there, in terms of COVID itself, it's very important to realize that even before COVID struck, there was a lot of forces at work driving change within the financial services industry. Customer expectations are changing, where the customers are more mature, more mobile, less trusting, and quicker to change service providers. I heard a very interesting quote actually an hour ago talking to a big bank locally, where the relationship age of a bank and their customer was longer than a typical marriage. And that window, and that was true up to like 5 years ago, what the person explained to me, and that's shrinking rapidly as that exact same scenario is playing out. Customer expectations are really changing and impacting our customers. So, threat of disruption, this is really emerging competitors entering the market and really driving a rapid adoption in some cases, using techniques and technology that the traditional players might not have. So this is really something impacting the burden of legacy systems. Most of our traditional banks have been there for 100 years, and there's a lot of legacy in there, and that's really something that they were looking at, irrespective of COVID entering the fray or not. Business models are changing. We are seeing, for example, ecosystems, collaborations between financial institutions, fintechs, regtechs, and the like. We are seeing marketplaces being built and really bringing the diverse economies together with the FSI in the middle of all of this. Complex regulatory environment really changing as things like cybercrime is evolving. So that's all a changing landscape that our customers have to deal with. And of course, fraud and cybercrime has always been top of mind and part of the risk agenda that our large customers and well, large and small actually have to deal with and look at. So what we're saying from a Microsoft perspective, really, we then classified the COVID impact into 3 areas. Respond, where customers have to respond to what's happening to them immediately. Recover is how can they try and normalize their business and work through the chaos that's around them. And then reimagine phase, which is really a phase where they can take advantage of some of the technology advances that had to be rapidly evolved, as Satya Nadella mentioned, even in the space of 2 months. So from a response phase, we're seeing two things here. Just waiting for the slide to evolve. There's really two things happening, and that's really empowering your workforce to be able to work and meet the customer needs remotely. And the other one that was evolving very quickly in this response phase was managing risk. And I'll give you an insight in terms of most of our customers talking to us today, basically saying if it wasn't for technologies like Teams, Microsoft Teams, they would not have been able to really operate within the conditions that lockdown was set down to be. They were not being able to deliver services to their customers. They wouldn't have had a digital channel that was safe enough to really be able to engage and complete. So from a recovery perspective, obviously the main issue there was the financial crime. So as we all know, it's an arms race between banks and the cyber criminals out there. And putting your entire workforce or your entire business on the internet, and with criminals having the opportunity to observe how customers are now behaving and taking advantage of these digital channels, obviously was a huge issue that our customers have to deal. And this is really a phase that's playing out in the majority of cases today. The other aspect of it, and I was personally affected by this, by the way, where my financial institution was not able to deliver a particular service to me remotely. However, with lockdown, all my physical bank branches were closed. And that triggered an emotion in me, so I was really thinking, but hang on, is this the right bank for me? Should I maybe think about changing? So this is really part of the recovery phase in terms of taking advantage of these new technologies that we mentioned before. Part of the reimagine phase, though, is really looking at your core business and how can you modernize and optimize what you have as a core platform, whether it be core banking, core payments, any of those. But that's really where, given the technology upheaval that we're seeing right now and the transformation happening in the technology space, things like immediate payments is really critical, and the customer side of that is very important to a bank today. And hence, moving from a product-centric approach and going to a customer-centric approach is really important in my mind. And given my own experience, as I mentioned before, I think very critical for our customers. So what Microsoft's doing in terms of what's happening in the financial markets today is, what we're saying is there's really 5 priority scenarios playing out in the market today. And I'm not going to call them out directly. I'll basically focus on the 3. It's the delivering differentiated customer experiences. So if I can differentiate myself today and provide the right service at the right time to the market in the way that they would like to consume it, that's really powerful, and that's really something that they were striving for. You have to comply and make sure that your risk aspect and the risk vector is minimized as much as possible, given the digital exposure that we're going through today, and the people that want to take advantage of it and basically attempt to perform criminal acts across the network. And empowering employees through teamwork is really making sure that your employees are productive and able to do their jobs and can access the markets and the customers that they need to. And from our perspective, this is all powered by a Microsoft platform consisting of Azure, Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, and as I mentioned before, together with our partners like inQuba that are on the call today with us. And that basically leads to these digitalization scenarios that we're developing as Microsoft, as well as with our partners, in terms of being able to empower our customers to differentiate themselves across these scenarios that are playing out. So I want to maybe pause here and hand it over to Trent to expand on this from an inQuba perspective.
Thanks, Servaas. The themes that Servaas has spoken through in terms of empowering employees and managing risk and differentiated customer experiences manifest themselves both in terms of general solutions that are playing out in the market, and obviously the point of discussion for today is really around experience solutions and journey solutions. So, one of the aspects of empowering employees is ultimately giving them a sense of what the customer experience is, and that's one of the things that we do is we deliver those insights to the organization and make sure that we are actually nudging customers forward. Similarly, when we're looking at customer experiences, what we want to do is we want to mobilize the organization to allow them to have a deep understanding of the customer experience. It's really only through that deep understanding that you can keep track of what needs to be done. And then when it comes to action, which is a key focus of what we do within our solution, making sure that the action plays out. Now, we do know that sometimes organizations, particularly financial institutions, have quite a number of constraints in terms of their systems. And that's why the inQuba solution has been developed really as an augmentation to those core systems that allows us to bring in data into the platform and use that data to actually drive improvements in the underlying systems, which are still absolutely vital for delivering service, but having an overlay that can actually push that forward. So the Microsoft suite really has a number of different solutions that you might be familiar with. Be that data and AI, be that dynamics. And what we're able to do is we're able to augment that with a number of modules within the inQuba solution. So we have inQuba CX for monitoring and managing customer experience. We have inQuba Journey, which is going to be predominant discussion from today. We have inQuba Engage that uses the context from CX and Journey to be able to engage with customers. And all of these solutions can actually help deliver on these major digitization scenarios that Servaas positioned at the opening. Moving on to look into the future, really what we want to do is get a sense of what the new normal looks like in terms of banking going forward. So many of you, probably not, if not all of you, are working from home at the moment. And the question really is, how do you continue to focus on the employees? How do you get those low-value automation tasks out of the way by using AI, and then focus on driving insights to action? So there are a wide range of solutions from the Microsoft suite, and when combined and complemented with the inQuba solutions, ultimately what we're able to do is to deliver on this inclusive customer experience. And all of that, in fact, will drive ultimately recovery for organizations. At the same time, we're very focused on risk, and risk manifests itself in a number of different ways. So we've obviously got risks related to market conduct and treating customers fairly. We have risk as it relates to people understanding products that need to be managed. There's a risk of lapsing. There's potentially the risk of a mismatch between the client's requirements and the product offered. By using the feedback loops that we have within our solution, we're able to push that forward. When it comes to cyber crime and security, that isn't necessarily a particular focus of inQuba, but what I can say is that we certainly benefit from the robust infrastructure that exists in Microsoft Azure, and all of the data that we have available is housed in the inQuba platform, which in turn runs on Azure, and therefore is completely safe, which is often a key point of concern for organizations such as yourselves. If we look at the Microsoft vision going forward, it's really characterized by this focus on helping organizations grow responsibly and to deepen the customer relationships, modernizing the systems, managing risk, helping with combating crime, and empowering employees. That's right from the application of Teams, as Servaas went through, all the way through to providing deep insights through very focused solutions such as ourselves. So what we're able to do for financial institutions is we're able to complement the platforms that are in place, and then using all of the AI capabilities that form part and parcel of the Azure environment, we actually package those up and deliver them specifically in the context of customer journeys. And all of that helps ultimately making sure that the regulatory requirements, and as the focus on market conduct, the Twin Peaks legislation comes to the fore, becomes more and more important to make sure that customers are looked after, the complaints are well dealt with, and ultimately that there's a continual cycle of feedback, and making sure that you don't obviously run afoul of the regulations. So I think that that really tees us up to talk a little bit more about the inQuba solution and how we are able to assist our client base in terms of managing this new normal. So our approach, which I'm going to talk through in a lot more detail as we progress, is really centered around big data, and then using that data ultimately to ingest into our platform, and then revealing these customer journeys, getting a sense of both what customers are doing and how they're feeling, and then optimizing the use of interventions ultimately to drive customers to achieve their goals. And we've done this with a number of well-known organizations. They include Suncorp and F&B, part of the First Rank Group. And we've actually got a number of very interesting projects underway at the moment with a large bank, a global insurer, and a telco. And the results that we've seen historically based on the work we've done in this space is that we can drive somewhere between 80 to 120% increase in conversion at key moments of truth. So a key moment of truth, for instance, might include making sure that customers actually activate their credit card. Another moment of truth is that they actually submit the completed the documentation to actually get that check account up and running. We've also seen that we can drive significant increases in terms of Net Promoter Score. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be talking through in a little bit more detail how we go about doing that. I think in any webinar, obviously, it's useful to just give some context in terms of how we fit in. And we are covered by Gartner in their guide for Voice of Customer Solutions. We're actually expecting a new guide to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And when you look at the three key areas of focus, whether it's reporting analytics or action orientation or customer journeys or the associated professional services, I think we've really shone through as one of the leading platforms in that particular space. So I guess the question that then has to be asked is, everybody's talking about digitization and there are a number of dominant themes. How do we take advantage of those digitization themes to actually drive forward? So let's start off with big data and AI. And I mean, that is a subject that's been spoken about for quite some time. You're obviously well aware that big data and managing large, diverse sets of data is particularly important in the context of AI, and big data is an empowering capability within AI. But often the management and organization of that data is quite difficult. In the same genre, what we're seeing is the emergence of CDPs, the notion of a customer data platform. And the whole idea of a customer data platform is that it's able to collect data from multiple sources, bring that data together. Obviously, any established financial institution has many backend systems, and the CDPs bring that data together to get a complete view of the customer from an end-to-end point of view. So then the question is, really, why are big data and AI and in turn CDP important? So if we just drill down a little bit more detail, big data gives you context. And why is context so important? Because context tells you what's happening in the world of the customer. It gives you a sense of potentially where your lapse risks are. It gives you a sense of where the revenue opportunities are. And it's big data is an important element in terms of achieving accurate and useful AI models. It also, that same context is very useful to engage people. And obviously, when you're engaging people, having understood their context, you obviously are going to be a lot more effective with your interventions. As it relates to CDPs or customer data platforms, the key focus there is on making sure that you can source data from multiple different sources and then unify that data. And it's really the unification that has in the past been a significant challenge. And then by unifying that data, again, you can pull that together in terms of building up a customer profile and then have very focused customer archetypes, ultimately going to a segment of one where you can send these highly personalized communications out. The other two major themes that we're seeing play out are conversational analytics and omni-channel engagement. So what is conversational analytics? That really is this whole ability to chat in order to complete commerce. And we've seen the rise of Facebook Messenger, WeChat, WhatsApp. It all started with SMS, and that's becoming a more and more mainstream element of organizations as they start to service customers. But conversational analytics is only part of the equation, and then obviously customers are engaging across multiple platforms. It might be the web channel, might be email, it might be the voice channel. So you want to pull all of those together. The reason conversational analytics then becomes super important is it really starts to bring together big data, and again, AI and unstructured data, and it's the emergence of a very more natural way to engage with people. And the interesting thing is, every time somebody interacts with you through one of those chat channels, you're collecting more and more insight, and you have this unique ability to actually store that insight and learn more about the customer, and in turn personalize those communications further. Similarly, when we're looking at omni-channel engagement, what we want to make sure is that we have this consistency of brand message. Customers and we all are part and parcel of this equation at the moment. We all sitting at home. I'm sure many of you are sitting with it. Well, I can almost guarantee you're sitting with at least 2 devices at the moment. So you no doubt have your mobile phone as well as the PC. Maybe you've got a tablet, and you're engaging across multiple channels and potentially multiple screens. And if organizations are able to harness this multi-channel engagement, ultimately what they're able to do is bring consistency to the message, and that means that your brand is well represented, and that you don't get fragmentation of message, and you really can drive the objectives of the organization. So those are the macro themes, and really what we do is we take advantage of those macro themes and pull them together in terms of journey optimization. So if we go back to where we started to talk about these themes in terms of big data, customer data platforms, conversational analytics, and omni-channel engagements, we can harness all of those through a platform, and in our case, it's obviously the inQuba platform, to really bring a couple of key focuses. So that would start off by getting a better sense of what the customer journey looks like using transactions. So we actually ingest data from multiple channels. We then start to engage with customers and collect emotional insights. We then pull all of that data together and start applying analytics on the big data sets. And then we start to drive these hyper-personalized engagements, as well as systemic changes in terms of the journey, as well as the offering that is brought to the customer. And then we keep track of those interventions. And probably that last step is one of the most important, is really keeping track of the intervention to make sure that the appropriate ROI plays out. So this obviously dovetails well with the themes that Servaas mentioned. We're able to deliver on differentiated customer experiences. We're able to manage risk. As I say, risk forms a key part of our solution. It might be the risk of a customer lapsing. It might be the risk of a poor service experience. It might be the risk of poor conduct. We're also able to empower employees by making them fully aware of the customer experience within the organization. And the way we put our technology together, leveraging off some of the Azure capabilities, we really are able to modernize your core systems with the capabilities within the inQuba platform. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about our 5-step process. This whole domain can be a little bit overwhelming, and therefore we've developed the 5-step methodology really to give it some focus and make it a lot more understandable. So we start off by discovering journeys. We then understand customers by collecting additional insight and particularly emotion. And a key part of that is often collecting insights in an unstructured way from customers. And then we start putting all of that data together, the transactional journeys, the emotional context, the unstructured data, and that gives us deep insights in terms of the emotional context of customers. So looking at both why they're doing something as well as what they're doing. And with that deep understanding, that really leads us to a systemic improvement program where we look at putting interventions in place. Those interventions might be fundamental redesigns, and often the Microsoft ecosystem becomes quite useful. For instance, it might be the redesign of a website or an online banking platform. It might be a set of interventions just simply to get the customer to move forward, or it might be an escalation of an unhappy customer to somebody in the organization to offer personalized service. So we can mix and match based on those particular perspectives. And then, as I said earlier, it's really a process of improvement and iteration that allows us to make sure that we get to the optimal outcome. So what I'd like to do is I want to go through each one of these 5 steps and give a little bit of context and then show them in the context of specifically the inQuba platform. So let's just think about a customer going through an application. It might be a check account, it might be a credit card. And obviously, any organization designs their customer journey to be completely seamless. So in this simple illustration, we've got application, we've got the customer accepting the quote, we've got documentation being exchanged, and ultimately activation. And that's a model customer experience. Of course, we all know that that's quite theoretical and it exists on brown paper exercises, but not necessarily in the real world. A real journey looks fundamentally different. A customer might start off at a branch for an application. They might go online. Then they might talk to an agent. They might go back to the branch. They might go online again. They might send an email. They might get frustrated. They might go into social media ultimately and complain. And in this particular case, they finish off by talking to an agent. And the thing that really is of key insight here is that this particular customer never got to activation. So as an organization, what often is happening, you're spending a lot of time working with customers, spending a lot of time getting them through the process, but ultimately not getting to the goal. The goal in this case, it's an aligned goal, is a shared goal between the customer and the organization to get to activation. So what the inQuba platform really provides for is we can take all of this transactional information and we can ingest transactions from multiple systems, and we provide a set of tools that make this relatively easy to do. And from that, we can actually visualize what the customer journey looks like. Now, these aren't customer journeys that are theoretical, and they're certainly not based on the opinions of people in the organization, the employees. These are, in fact, the real journeys that customers have. And given that we're taking in data from multiple different sources, we're able to see different customers going through different journeys. We're able to see stall points. We're able to see loops. And that then really starts to give us a sense of what customers are doing. We obviously can overlay that with certain perspectives, like different customer segments, and start to understand how different customers, for instance, customers that are buying an economy or an entry-level product, differentiate and navigate the organization differently to those that are buying a comprehensive or premier product. So if we start to reflect on a customer, it's important to not forget that customers are real people, and real people have real emotions. And in the age of big data, the way we get a sense of the customer's journey is really by using this data to get a sense. So here we've got an illustration. A customer starts off, for argument's sake, potentially a little bit confused by the offerings available to them. They might then select a product. They might have a service failure. We're going to talk about a service failure later on. And then that service failure, for argument's sake, might be improved, and they might be very grateful. And ultimately, what we're all striving to do is we're striving to delight the customer. So as customers are going through this customer journey, we want to capture all of those emotions. And again, the inQuba platform provides tools to do exactly that. So we've got a unique capability that allows us to apply rules to the customer journeys that I spoke about earlier, and to actually trigger off engagements from our platform to the customers across multiple channels. It could be a WhatsApp chat, that could be an SMS chat, it might be an email to web survey, It might be just a website survey. And we can ask questions like this. So in this particular case, we're just illustrating an example from Charlotte. Charlotte is one of our fictitious customers from a fictitious company called Transatlantic. And here what we're saying is, Charlotte, please provide feedback. And she's obviously saying she had a great experience. And then what we're able to do is we apply in-depth analytics that allows us to look at this interplay between the customer journey and the experience that a customer is having at any particular point in time. So once we start to bring together this data, we start to get a sense of both what customers are doing as well as why they're doing it. What is their motivation? How they're feeling? And using advanced analytics, we're able to then get a sense of exactly what's happening in the organization. And that gives us really the ability to start designing a set of engagements to more effectively engage with the customer and make sure that we can get a strong sense of what we need to do to actually get them to move forward. Now, the reason this particular approach is important is, first of all, we want to have an approach that is highly personalized. Traditionally, what we've seen is that a funnel type approach gets used for communication. So we've got lots of customers, we select an audience, they respond, we maybe select a sub-audience, they respond, and ultimately you get your funnel effect where you have a small number of customers that have actually ultimately responded. Now, with a journey approach, what we're actually doing is we're keeping track of each of the journeys, in this case, Pam and Mark, and Pam and Mark are having slightly different customer journeys. They're taking different actions at different points in time. And what we're doing is we're collecting insights as they navigate along their customer journey, and we're using that to then engage with them. And ultimately, it's all about that customer goal. It's all about making sure that the customer reaches their goal. And ultimately, as an organization that's hopefully offering value to your customers, you want to make sure that there's very strong alignment between the goal of the customer and the goal of the organization. That then leads us to the actual intervention strategy. And looking at that insight and using these particular techniques, our platform's then able to define certain engagements. And as I said earlier, those engagements or interventions can take three forms. So here we're illustrating specifically a highly personalized nudge communication. The other form of communication that we can put in place is that we can actually execute on a escalation to somebody in the organization. So more of a person-to-person engagement. We're going to use that in an example later on. And lastly, you can bring about systemic changes when you start to see that things fundamentally need to be fixed within the organization. So that might be investment in, for instance, an improvement in your call center, or it might be the way you run your walk-in centers, for argument's sake. And we use all of that insight on a series of iterations. And the way we do this is really by making use of a control group and a test group. Obviously, the control group basically doesn't get any intervention, and we separate and track them. And then our test group will get a series of engagements, and again, illustrating here the different personalized communications, and we can actually then keep track of the value that arises from these communications and compare that to the control group and see what additional value arises. So it's very much a bottom line driven approach. I think certainly as somebody in the industry, sometimes we get criticism to say it's all about making customers feel better. Well, that might well be true, but it's really not losing sight on the fact that we want to make customers feel better by using these optimization techniques and ultimately driving the bottom line. So again, what our platform does is it keeps track of these engagements, it allows them to be adjusted along the way, and it provides a series of analytics to get a strong sense of exactly what is happening within the customer base. So we want to actually potentially make this a little bit more practical and give you a real life example. It's hopefully an example that you would relate to, and talks about a customer going through a claims example. Now, before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about, it's a bit of a rehash of some of the things that we've spoken about, just showing you how they fit together. So to effectively engage with a customer, you need a couple of key ingredients. You need the customer's emotional state. And we've spoken at length about how we do that, how we collect insights using unstructured data by engaging with the customer. We then need to group those customers together. We need to look at very similar attributes. There might be high-risk customers, there might be low-income customers, They might be customers with low standards or levels of technical understanding or financial understanding. And then once we've understood the emotional state of the customers and we've understood the groupings, we then need to construct content that really is aligned to those customers. So obviously, if you've got an older audience, they might appreciate a slightly more cerebral approach to communication. If it's a younger millennial customer base, it might be a little bit more fun and energetic. And you might have, for instance, different ways that you address customers. And then you want to use all of these elements and pull them together at the right time. And we spoke already about the importance of timing to be able to nudge the customers at the right time. So let's move on to a particular scenario. And I want to start off by giving a little bit of context of the scenario before I drill into the detail. So here we have a customer. Again, we have Charlotte. We've profiled her by collecting some data and running predictive models. And we know that she's a high-value customer, and unfortunately, she's showing a lot of signs of being a high risk. She's actually been through a claims experience, and she's had to deal with a number of suppliers. And what we're able to do along the customer journey is we're able to collect insights and see that there are actually a couple of problems with the way Transatlantic is delivering service. So there's poor communication, there's poor service, and in fact, there's a complaint of poor workmanship. So let's look at a little bit more detail of what happens to Charlotte. So she, in fact, had an accident on her way to work, and she registered a claim. But she got quite frustrated because she actually had to call Transatlantic on a couple of occasions, and she was really not having a good time in terms of selecting her panel beater. But eventually she managed to get that sorted, rearranged her meetings, and wanted to take her car to the panel beater. And she made use of the additional services within the Transatlantic policy to take an Uber to the panel beater. And along the way, she tried to pick up her hire car, and it turned out that her hire car was not ready, nor was it clean. Having overcome that, and we'll talk a little bit about how we overcame that, she then headed off to work, and 10 days later, she wanted an update, and she got a call from the call center of Transatlantic, and it said that her car was ready. Obviously, because there was no advance notice, she hadn't made the appropriate arrangements. So she said to Transatlantic, look, it's a Friday afternoon, please can I keep the car for the weekend? Which she duly did, and that was arranged on her behalf. And then she obviously picked up the car on a Monday morning, and she saw that there was both a scratch and a bad sign. I'm sure many of you are looking at this and saying, was this fabricated or was this real life scenario? Turns out it was fabricated, but I think we can all relate to scenarios that are not dissimilar. So again, looking at the role that the inQuba platform has to play, we are able to profile customers as high risk. We can then engage with them, and we can actually start a conversation to actually start to chat to these particular customers. So here what we're doing is we're collecting insight from the customer, asking for feedback, and she says that ABC, that's the car hire company, made her wait. That then resulted in an escalation. That escalation was then routed to Jennifer Transatlantic. There immediately was a message that was triggered to Charlotte to say that Jennifer was looking after this particular engagement. And then Jennifer took full ownership of this particular scenario, keeping track of the fact that there was a car organized for her. So her own Polo was actually collected and the hire car was delivered. And because she is a high-risk, high-value customer, that she was put under special care of Jennifer, and ultimately Jennifer made sure that she had a great experience during this whole claims experience. And ultimately, that obviously feeds back to a customer that is delighted with the Transatlantic brand. So if we look at the components that make up this solution, making sure that we are able to engage at key moments of truth, is as the customer is going through the journey of registering and then the assessment of the claim and the approval and the panel meeting experience and the car hire experience, what we're able to do is we're able to collect feedback along the way. That feedback in turn helps inform context for Charlotte, and we're able to send in these context-driven interventions. Some of those have rules associated with them, which then give rise to escalations. And those escalations make sure that the right intervention happens to actually engage with the customer. Now, I'm pretty sure that you're looking at all of this and saying, yeah, we do elements of this, and most organizations, and certainly organizations that are successful in the market, will be doing that. But I think if we look at the key differentiators of the inQuba platform, they really can be captured around a couple of key themes that make this a whole lot easier. The first of those is that the way we've put the platform together is that it really has a reduced dependency on development. So we're able to ingest that data without significant overhead, either from your IT department or alternatively from ourselves. So everything is a configuration, not a development. We have put a lot of thought into how we get to speed to insight. So we have a lot of predefined reports that are able to analyze the data. That then gives us strong insights in terms of where to intervene. So we get, to intervention clarity very quickly. So again, the interventions either be an escalation or a digital nudge or an improvement in a customer journey element. And then we can iterate through those. And the platform, again, is all user-driven. It's very easy to use, and we'd be delighted to share with anybody on the call a demo. Obviously, we'll be providing our contact details, and we'll be following up with you. And then the last point is really putting it together to make sure that we have this very important and tangible ROI. We're well aware of the fact that investments in the space really are quite difficult to justify, and therefore absolutely everything that we do has to have a bottom line impact. So just in closing, before we get on to questions, some of you might be asking the question, well, where do we start with all of this? It sounds like an interesting idea. Well, we've heard about your 5-step process of discovering journeys and understanding customers and getting to insights and designing engagement strategies and then reviewing and optimizing. So what is the entry point? And to make that a little bit easier, what we've developed is we've developed the Journey Accelerator workshop. And it's a very simple process. We will be in touch with you. We'll schedule a 2-hour interactive virtual workshop. We've done quite a number of these over the last couple of months, and in fact, I would argue we probably can do it more effectively now that we can do it online. Then what we'll do is we'll map your customer journey and help you understand your customer profiles. We'll look at what those nudge opportunities are. We look at what are the sources of data to get visual view on the customer experience, and then help work with you to quantify the ROI. And you'll actually receive a high-level journey design. You'll get a view in terms of where we're going to collect insights, and we'll help you model the ROI associated with your journey project. That takes us to our Q&A. We've got limited time left, but Anthony is going to be helping us out in terms of navigating those questions.
Yeah, thanks, Trent. I've rejoined the conversation. I hope you can hear me. I have got a couple of questions that have come through. So thank you to those of you who have submitted a couple of questions. I'm going to pose them to both of you, Trent and Servaas. Just make sure that you are unmuted. Here's our first one from Colin. Thank you, Colin. How can we ensure a successful customer journey project in the business?
And maybe I should take that one. I think what we've seen is that obviously there are a couple of key components for success. We'd like to think obviously having the right technology is really important, but I think in addition to that, you certainly want to make sure that you've got executive commitment. So having the right executive commitment, making sure that the methodology is well developed, and then making sure that the whole organization is aligned to their customer experience. The only reason that any organization exists is because of the customer, and the customer ultimately is the party that generates revenue for the financial institution. And it's really important to get the whole organization aligned to that. So We'll often start in a small, narrow area. We'll focus on the area. We show results. We don't like to do very large, complex projects as a start. What we like to do is we like to focus on the narrow area. We like to get some quick wins and then roll out and show success over time.
Great. I've got another question from Lisa. Lisa, thank you for this question. It says, thank you. You've shared a lot of detail. How quickly do you get results?
So I think, as I said earlier, certainly from a platform point of view, we've designed the platform to be able to deliver results very quickly. So we're looking at a 14 to 16 week period to go through the 5-step process for an area. So it might be, for instance, the acquisition of a product, or it might be focusing on the lapse and retention area. So 14 to 16 weeks to get up and running. And then we'd have to run a pilot for probably another 4 to 8 weeks, and we start to see the bottom line then. And as I said earlier, we really see some great results. We can often what happens is that we actually get effectively a doubling in conversion at key moments of truth within the customer journey.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And let's make this our last one. And thank you to those of you who have sent through other questions. We'll try and address them offline. But this one from Pumi. I'm familiar with both inQuba and Microsoft independently, but what are the benefits of both together? I think you can both have a go at that.
Yeah, Trent, maybe from a Microsoft perspective, to put that in perspective for me, Microsoft builds a platform and then invests heavily in the ecosystem around this platform. And we don't try to be the solution provider for everything and everyone, but we rather create an ecosystem and allow, built-in open APIs and open platforms. So this gives you the flexibility to plug and play different aspects and different parts of a solution into our platform. That's a Microsoft point of view. And I'll hand over to Trent now, because inQuba has a very more focused view leveraging that platform.
Yeah, so thanks, Servaas. I think the starting point is that obviously our solution is built on the Microsoft technology. We get all of the comforts of running off Azure, all of the security of running off Azure. As these solutions get rolled out, they become more and more mission critical for organizations. So that's, all of those are really important. But I think more than that is that, as Servaas said, there's a very broad ecosystem. And what we're starting to see is that to offer an end-to-end solution, I mean, we are very focused, and we'd like to think that we are one of the leaders as far as customer journey optimization is concerned. But we don't do many other things. I mean, we don't provide, for instance, core banking platforms. We don't necessarily provide, general collaboration tools like Teams. It's really the combination of bringing the power of the Microsoft brand and technology with the very unique and focused experience that we have within the journey orchestration space. By pulling those two together, we think we've really ended up with a highly differentiated solution, and something that that organizations, particularly financial institutions, can trust. And I think trust in this day and age is absolutely vital.
That's brilliant. Thanks, guys. So just in closing, and we're going to be closing in a minute or two, just a reminder, Trent did mention the Accelerator workshop, so please do reach out if this is something that you believe your business will benefit from. I'd also like to take the opportunity, if I can mention this, Trent, we actually have another set of webinars coming up starting next week, and what we will do is we'll make sure that, and these are about the 90% economy and scoring 100% for CX in the 90% economy, so this is just a little bit of a cheeky announcement, I guess. We'll make sure that in the mailers you get after this webinar, where you will have your slideware and your materials from this webinar, we'll make sure that you also have details of this, and you can register for this if you'd like. And then I think, guys, why not 20 seconds final thoughts each? So Servaas, why don't you just close? Any final thoughts from your side?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, inQuba team. I really appreciate it, and it's great actually to be in action with your customers and showing the collaboration that exists between the companies, and we actually should be together in front of our customers. So that's really from my perspective what I'm trying to enact with my team as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Microsoft, for the opportunity to engage today. So we obviously really value the Microsoft relationship. I think really for those people that have attended, and we really were pleasantly surprised with the level of engagement, we really love to hear from you. That might be in the form of giving you explicit assistance because our solutions are value to you. But even if that's not the case, we'd love to share experiences around customer journey management, and maybe if you do something different today, or maybe it's not a priority for your business, we'd still love the opportunity to engage. The market is filled with a lot of great innovations, and the market in which we operate has some very strong financial services organizations. So we really would welcome the opportunity to share and engage and learn from each other. So thank you very much for your attention today, and we really look forward to engaging on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, thank you to both of you and for your time today. And thanks to all of our attendees. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.